Hey guys, welcome to the Crypto Farmer. Today we're going to look at the different ways you can buy Bitcoin. There are mainly three. The first one involves KYC, the identity verification process used by many cryptocurrency platforms. This is the traditional way of buying Bitcoin through cryptocurrency exchanges such as Binance or Kraken, where you have to provide personal information and verify your identity. Personally, I would only recommend this option in certain circumstances, particularly for people dealing with larger amounts of capital. And even then, privacy and this protection of your personal information should be taken very seriously. Because remember, your identity is valuable. Your personal information can reveal a lot about you. And once that information is stored in a database, you have to trust that the company storing it will protect it properly. So privacy matters. The second way of buying Bitcoin is through what we could call a semi-KYC service. For example, applications such as Relai. With these kinds of services, there are usually limits depending on the platform, the country you are in, and the amount you want to buy. You can make a bank transfer from your own bank account and use that money to purchase Bitcoin. Why do I call it semi-KYC? Because the platform may not require the same type of full identity verification that a traditional cryptocurrency exchange requires. However, they can still see who is sending the bank transfer. So it is important to understand that this is not completely anonymous. The bank knows who you are, and the service can potentially associate your payment with your Bitcoin purchase. For someone who is just starting to buy Bitcoin and feels completely lost, this can be a relatively simple way to get started without going through the full experience of a traditional exchange. But personally, I always recommend looking at the third option, and that is buying Bitcoin through a peer-to-peer marketplace. P2P means peer-to-peer. In other words, person to person. One person agrees to sell Bitcoin while another person agrees to buy it. They reach an agreement through this P2P platform, and the transaction can be protected by a multi-signature contract. The platform acts as an arbitrator or mediator, helping make sure that both sides follow the agreed process. The important thing here is that the Bitcoin is not simply handed over to the platform as if it were a traditional exchange. Instead, the Bitcoin can be held in a multi-signature arrangement until the conditions of the trade have been fulfilled. If you don't fully understand how multi-signature transactions work in Bitcoin yet, don't worry, it can sound a little confusing at first. We'll talk about that in more detail in future videos. Basically, you simply follow the instructions provided by the P2P platform. Platforms such as Hodl Hodl, RoboSats, which operates through the Lightning Network, or Peach Bitcoin are examples of services that use peer-to-peer Bitcoin trading. The process is actually quite simple. The Bitcoin seller deposits the Bitcoin into the multi-signature contract. Once the platform confirms that the Bitcoin is locked in the contract, you can make the payment to the seller using the agreed payment method. You send the fiat currency, whether that's euros, dollars, or another supported currency. Then you confirm that you've made the payment. The seller confirms that they have received the funds. Once the conditions of the trade have been fulfilled, the Bitcoin is released and sent to the Bitcoin address you provided. And here's another important Bitcoin privacy tip. Whenever possible, avoid reusing Bitcoin addresses. Using a fresh address for each transaction can help improve your privacy and make it harder to link different transactions together. So guys, those are the three main ways of buying Bitcoin. The first is through traditional KYC exchanges, the second is through semi-KYC services, and the third is through peer-to-peer Bitcoin marketplaces. Obviously, there are other possibilities. For example, you could simply have a friend who wants to sell you Bitcoin in exchange for cash or another currency. But that's a little less common. We're a pretty unusual bunch, us Bitcoiners. And that's it for today's episode of The Crypto Farmer. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time. And remember, some people grow potatoes. Some raise animals. I farm crypto.